Future trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Welcome to Grain Gab, a show where we sit back and gab about what's on our minds in this grain market and how it's affecting you, our producer, and what can we do about it. Look, these grain markets are forever moving, crazy, and downright emotional. That's why we're here, to sit down, look at things holistically, find a strategic yet grounded approach to handling the obstacles that the market gives us. I'm Lori Nelsen, your host, and with me is Kristin Stien. How are you, Kristin?
We're doing good, Lori. How are you?
I'm good. This past month...
Hold on. What's in your cup today?
Oh, what's in my cup today? You know, I got a variety of cups today. I got a little hot chocolate.
Which is why you were like, let's get to it. Come on, we got things to talk about. I've got things to drink.
Yeah, I'm feeling like we got lots to cover. So yeah, a little bit of hot chocolate and some water. How about you?
We're going with a strong coffee that gives me strength on top of that, because like you said, we have lots to talk about today. Finally, something going on in the market that we've been able to do something with. So yeah, let's get to her.
Okay, all right. So this past month, the market's been, well, giving the grain producer the opportunity to sell some grain, old crop and new crop. Wheat's been on a rally due to cut in production and last Friday's WASDE report, pulling corn and soybeans along with it. Planting progress is at 49% on corn versus the 5-year average of 54%. Soybeans are 35% planted versus the 5-year average of 34% planted. So folks are finding places that they can plant between these rain events. The funds have been offsetting some of their short positions, giving the producer the opportunity to be a seller. The funds historically at this time will start moving out of their short positions, which gives the producer the opportunity to sell. What does this all mean, Kristin?
It means opportunity. I'm so happy for this. So let's talk about first what's going on with wheat. Because while we all are looking out our backyard and sitting there and saying, oh, it's slower planting progress, that's why the market's going higher, there's actually a bigger story going on, right?
So Indonesia has cut some of its production. Just this morning here, Russia's had some frost that's come in that's affecting the world market. And the funds have massively exited their short positions several weeks ago, which gave the wheat producers the opportunity to sell some of their bushels.
Yeah, wheat's been on a rip-roar higher. When you look at their global ending stocks, having any sort of a production issue, we can see why the markets are higher there, especially when you compare it to corn and soybeans. We have plenty of corn and soybeans globally. We don't have plenty of wheat globally. And so then when there starts to be production issues, that's where the funds are like, oh, maybe we should lighten up this 2-year-long short position that we have with them. And that's what's lifted the wheat market. And I mean, a lot of our listeners are more corn and soybeans through and through. So they're saying, well, what does that have to do with me? Corn can be a good substitute for wheat. And we're still in a planting battle between corn and soybeans. So if corn's going to start going higher, beans have a little bit of room to move up as well. And so between the whole delayed planting progress, I challenge the whole delayed part right now, because compared to 2019, we're still plenty ahead of that pace. If we consider that of the risk of prevent plant on top of what's going on with wheat, that's why we're seeing the funds exit some of their short positions kind of as a risk-off approach. Now the question becomes, do they go long this market? Are we topping out here where we're at? What's going on? And that's where we really wanted to spend our time today in what are we doing with this? What does this mean? So on and so forth. The rule that it really goes back to is that number 3. Right? Always ask 3 questions when executing. Is the price profitable? Is it a strong price historically? And what's your bias? So let's dig into that. Is it profitable? We're nearing $5 corn. For a lot of folks, when we look at like Iowa states and even our own anecdotal evidence of working through that cost of production this past winter, that is a profitable number. Okay, so is it a strong price historically? Let's go through that. Look at just corn alone, for instance, right now. When you compare it to the last, 3-4 years, technically not. But what is true about the last 3 or 4 years, right? We've been in soaring prices. When we look at that ending stock for corn, being in that 2.1 billion bushel carryout, or at least that projection, and we start comparing it to previous years that were at those numbers, take 2019 as your example for that, we're actually at a really strong price historically, given the situation. Another version of that, look at DISA 2014. That was a very similar year, from coming off of years of drought, having lots of acres planted, waning demand, coming off of years of high inflation, so on and so forth. And we're taking a look at that chart, what it did back in 2014, and comparing it to 2024. There's a lot of similarities. And so when we see the bumps that we're giving in this market, we should really take a good look at that and say, what do we want to be doing here?
What do we call that, Kristin? Rewarding the market.
There you go. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to that bias in the market, so some of the conversations that I've been having with guys as our targets have filled and we're looking to place new targets, looking to roll puts higher, so on and so forth, is, boy, I really wish I felt more comfortable with where I was planted so that I could sell more. Okay. And these aren't guys that are 55, 60% sold. These are guys that are 30% sold, so there's plenty of room to sell yet. And the other comment was, do you think we'll get a prevent plant rally that I can capture on? One, we're there. We're getting a rally right now. And two, rallies happen because the market's uncomfortable. And that's when you need to be selling, because the minute that you get comfortable selling, the rest of the market has as well, and it's too late. So it's time to lean into that uncomfortability, lean into that and pull the trigger, because a 2.1 billion bushel carryout doesn't constitute a $4 price, much less a $5 price. So take advantage of it when you get that opportunity.
I'd go back to looking at your percentage sold, convert that over to bushels per acre sold, to really lean into that. Like Kristin said, lean into that.
And the same can be said about soybeans too, right? When's the last time we have seen a 445 million bushel carryout in soybeans? That's with really strong crush demand.
Yeah.
Really strong crush demand.
That's a huge number.
These are where you want to take advantage of the opportunities, especially when it's profitable. Because at the end of the day, one of the other comments that I actually got this morning was, but what happens if something changes this? With the way the world works, things can change on a dime. And that's exactly why we focus on the number one thing. Is it profitable to the farm? Because that's what matters more than anything. That's why the farmers are out here farming, so they can do it year after year after year. And so if we're making money on the farm, then we keep on going, and then we can adjust to whatever the market gives us after that. And to that point, from a seasonality standpoint, is it a good price historically? On beans, we're still neck and neck with that, and we're way better than where we were back in 2019, right? When we were having those larger carryout numbers. So do we answer those three questions? Is it profitable? Is it a strong price historically, and what's my bias? Check, check. Pull the trigger. Pull the trigger, roll your puts up, do what needs to be done during these emotional times so that later on we're getting the results that we want to get.
And if we want to put some more technical analysis behind it, Cody and Andy, we can put a little tech talk in here when you look at the December 24 chart and just how it's been a descending chart since its birth. We've come up to that 495, we've crossed over it, but that's right in line with that trend line. And so
on
that's
top
worthy
of that,
of filling.
Absolutely. Yeah. So look what has happened on DISA 24 corn as we've neared that 200-day moving average and up against that downward trend line. We continue to see weakness there. We have widening basis. We have open interest that continues to be lackluster, so to speak, meaning funds are just getting out of their short positions. They're not adding on to new long positions, and the physical buyers aren't either. Right. So it's not like they're overly interested in this market. At the same time, I won't take the place of Andy, but at the same time, we're struggling in our chart there. Take advantage of it, right? Or at the very least, protect yourself by rolling those puts higher.
And I think another question we can ask is, if we're going to have these carryout numbers, who's going to buy it at what point? If we do push higher.
If the cure to high prices is high prices, the cure to low prices is low. But are we really at low prices when a physical buyer sees a 2 billion bushel carryout Are they interested in $5 corn, or are they interested in $3.50 corn? It's
Ooh.
a good question and a good point to ask yourself, Lori.
Yeah. So we would encourage you to be participating in the market. Kristin, what else you got for charts? It's a kind of a big chart day today.
Yeah, lots to look at, lots to consider. That's why we said we had lots to talk through. I think that hit the nail on the head there. The only other thing that I have is the good old questions for humans, Lori. There you go. We want the world to know you. They already know my spiciness out of this. We got to see your side of it here too. So,
okay,
are you
bring
ready?
it on.
What's one hobby that you just don't get?
Oh, what's the curling game? Is it the curling game?
Yeah, on ice and stones? Yeah, curling.
What's that called? Is that curling, right?
It's in the Olympics, Lori. That's like
I know,
an official thing.
I mean, to me, that's an adult beverage game.
Just like bowling and golfing. But I mean, some people do it sober, so we'll leave them at that.
Yeah, to do it as a sport,
yeah,
I find it more entertaining, I guess.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that.
One more. What physical, and I already have my answer for you for this, so if you don't say it correctly, I'll let the whole world know. What physical activity or sport could you defeat pretty much anyone at?
Arm wrestling.
I thought you were gonna say shotgunning, but beverages in particular.
I used to shoot a gun pretty well.
We have videos for that, folks. So Paige will link my email and contact information if you'd like to see that, or have any other questions about what we were talking about today too.
Well, that's another episode of Grain Gab. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button at the bottom. It really helps in our algorithms. Thanks to Paige and the Insights team for making us look good. And until next time, keep your head up, keep your feet grounded. Cheers.
Cheers.